Immigrants beg to be deported, belief that men can get pregnant is haram once again, eco-activists are short on cash, family morals are again mandatory, and eco-Marxist plastic bans are reversed exactly by those who pushed them. At this rate, soon enough we might have to start working on building the church of the Wuhan Flu. Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the 11th installment of the Good News video. Alright, so in addition to the piece I wrote at the beginning of the Wuhan flu panic, a lot more good news have piled up. Lord and Saviour Coronachan delivers in many ways, great or small. And while I can't document them all, some of them are just too good not to at least mention them. I mean, some of the good news brought via the Wuhan flu panic would have taken months or years to win the argument for, and while granted some of them are only temporary, it's still good. So let us begin. Via Axios, the US expelled thousands of migrants under coronavirus public health order. The US has expelled more than 6,000 migrants using new powers, enabling the federal government to almost immediately turn back border crossers under the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention emergency public health order that went into effect on March the 21st, according to new Customs and Border Protection data. The order has drastically lowered the number of immigrants in CBP custody to fewer than 100, the agency's acting commissioner Mark Morgan told reporters on Thursday. The number of people coming into the US overall has plummeted due to coronavirus-related travel bans in place at both the northern and southern borders. Between the border crisis last year and the CDC order, border officials had been arresting or turning away an average of 10,000 migrants a week, according to a CBP official. Since March 21st, the agency has averaged 4,200 apprehensions and expulsions per week. The number of attempted border crossings fell by over 2,500 between February and March to 33,937 according to CBP's latest data. This time last year, border numbers began to surge. There were nearly 104,000 attempted border crossings in March 2019. Although some migrants will be able to seek humanitarian relief, it is ultimately at the discretion of Border Patrol agents, and US public health is the top concern, Morgan said, close quote. So, how should this be memed? Buses full of Mexicans go brr. But no, seriously, shouldn't this be celebrated by everyone? I mean, the left can be happy that there are no more children in cages at the border, and also the curve is being flattened. And the right can be happy that there are fewer immigrants, both legal and especially illegal. I mean, what's not to like? Well, the right isn't exactly objecting, but the left does, because, you see, it's never about the welfare of the immigrants or about immigration per se. It's all about terrorizing the citizens. Stupid quarantine for citizens has to be enforced harshly, even though the policy itself is wrong, but immigrants get to do whatever they want. This is why I routinely call the far left the far wrong, which is just slightly to the right of helicopterable. But the winning on immigration, thanks to our Lord and Saviour Coronachan, doesn't stop here. Not only is everything we wanted being implemented, but the illegal immigrants themselves beg to be deported. Via The Guardian, we're gonna die! Migrants in US jail beg for deportation due to COVID-19 exposure. Detainees in a US immigration jail are begging to be released after potential COVID-19 exposure, saying the conditions are so brutal that they would rather suffer deportation than remain locked up. 3 men incarcerated at the Wynn Correctional Center in a remote part of Louisiana told The Guardian that Immigration and Customs Enforcement has isolated 44 of them together after they were possibly exposed to the coronavirus. Some of the detainees are so desperate to leave that they are seeking voluntary deportation. They say their cries for masks, hand sanitizer, gloves and cleaning supplies have gone ignored, including for elderly detainees and those with asthma. In a series of phone calls, the men described a nightmare ordeal over the last 2 weeks, citing rampant mistreatment and a terrifying lack of information from ICE after they learned they were under some kind of quarantine. They also said that 7 of their fellow detainees were deported on a flight to Colombia this week, 4 days into a 14-day quarantine period, which would appear to violate basic standards of coronavirus containment. Their first-hand accounts escalate concerns that human rights lawyers have been raising for weeks, that ICE jails could become death traps during the pandemic, and that the only way to save lives and slow the potential spread is to release people en masse. People are writing to the judge that they want to be deported as soon as possible. They don't want to continue fighting, said a detainee from El Salvador in his 30s who declined to give his name. He said he was trying to self-deport and was also helping an asylum seeker seek deportation. He told me, "I'd prefer to go home instead of being in this jail. ICE has to release all the people immediately," close quote. Now, admittedly, this is an older piece of news and I didn't find any follow-up on this, but still. I mean, sure, there have been individual instances where illegals begged to be deported, but this happened in the past too, but dozens at once? In multiple countries? Because make no mistake, this didn't happen just in the United States, it happened in almost all countries of Europe too. I was recently reading a story where illegal immigrants in places like Bosnia begged to be deported. Funny thing though, it didn't happen in Belarus or Sweden, those being the only countries not insane enough to introduce near universal house arrest. And speaking of arrest, via The Pluralist, first prisoner to die from coronavirus in the UK is a convicted pedophile. Now, isn't that great? I won't be reading the article because we have a lot to go through. But seriously, I'm almost sorry that the Wuhan flu is not as dangerous as the panic cards claimed. Because if it were, I would have enjoyed to see some of other individuals getting it too, like, Soros Georgiou or Angela Merkel or the entirety of the European Commission and many other places. In fact, I think Merkel got it, didn't she? Anyway, it's unfortunate, but hey, we'll take what we can get. For instance, the Wuhan flu panic also got us a lot of moral behavior and instantly brought back some sense. Also from The Pluralist, NYC forced to crack down on rim jobs due to coronavirus. Mouth on anus might spread COVID-19. The New York City Health Department on Thursday issued guidelines detailing how residents should and should not engage in sex amid the coronavirus outbreak. Most of the city's nearly 9 million inhabitants, along with the rest of the state, will be under stay-at-home orders starting Sunday evening, but the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene suggested that there was no excuse for unsafe sexual practices. You are your safest sex partner. Masturbation will not spread COVID-19, especially if you wash your hands and any sex toys with soap and water for at least 20 seconds before and after sex, the guidelines said, referring to the respiratory illness, whatever. The department added, disinfect keyboards and touchscreens that you share with others for video chat or for watching pornography or for anything else, close quote. Well, okay, this is only a moderate win. I mean, it discourages one from a serious form of degeneracy by replacing it with a less serious one. But hey, it's still something. But enough of it to get the left to complain. I mean, via The Guardian, parents with children, home haircuts and no affairs, the virus has forced us to live in a weirdly moralistic way. I mean, seriously? I mean, look, I despise the lockdown type of measures just like every other person who is not insane. And of course, I'm not abiding by any of these orders. But seriously? Not being able to commit adultery is so bad that it goes into the headline? And the whole article is the kind of middle-class left-wing cathedral prick whining that just begs to be kicked in the teeth. Here, listen to some snippets. Quote, "Imagine if you just got out of a silent 40-day retreat without Wi-Fi and returned to society not knowing about the virus. What would you think had happened? My first thought would be that a plain people religious group, think Quaker or Mennonites or Amish, had become our new rulers. These groups live simply, homeschool their children, dress plainly, have a strict moral code, make their own furniture, sport home haircuts, and don't travel far from their communities. Just look at how we have changed how we live in only a week. Schools are closed and children are being homeschooled, not in groups or centers outside the home, but literally schooled at home by their parents. Parents or carers who only recently set off for work each day and drop their children at daycare centers or in school are now spending every minute of their every day with their children. Oh my God, the horror. All of your friends interstate and overseas have cancelled plans to visit. The jet-set and global citizens have been grounded, either quarantined with bad food in previously luxurious hotels or forced to stay at home and retreat into neighborhood and family groups. In the tradition of plain-dressed religious groups, people's hair has also changed. Everyone looks as if they cut their hair at home into bowl cuts with blunt scissors. Those with colored hair have stopped maintaining it. They have gray temples, white streaks, and skunk stripes down their parts. Men are growing long beards. The person coming out of the silent retreat might also presume that the sect that's taken over society has a strict moral code as well as an appalling dress code. Adulterous affairs the world over have suddenly stopped. All the cover is gone, and suddenly you can't pretend you're meeting your colleagues for an after-work drink while you're actually shagging your bit on the side. Even if you could have an affair, there's nowhere to have it. The hotels have turned into quarantine stations, and illicit couples concerned about being busted via contact tracing have put their affairs on ice. Say you're not having an affair, but you feel like a bit of casual sex or at least a snog. You could go to a bar, but they're all shut, so you could go on the apps and try to hook up, but no one is keen to meet anyone anywhere anytime in the next 6 months. Even your friends have become strangely conservative. Checking your Instagram feed, there's lots of inspirational quotes, videos of people making sourdough bread, others of people planting herb gardens. No one seems to be going out. You feel an abscess of FOMO, close quote. Now, admittedly, the author, she makes also some valid points, like criticizing the conservative government in Australia for going socialist, though she may not be criticizing it because likely she is a socialist anyway. But still, this kind of whining is good news in itself. Oh no, kids are being homeschooled, the horror. Though, in fairness, lefties are really terrified since they hold summit after summit, even now, to demonize homeschooling. Well, of course they do. But the Kung Flu panic is collapsing leftist narratives about many things, and it's doing it at an amazing pace. Via the Daily Wire, liberal cities reverse plastic bans, ban reusable bags, plastic industry lobbies for more. While the economy-crushing coronavirus shutdowns are wreaking havoc in just about every industry, the plastic industry is seeing, at least temporarily, one win. A growing number of liberal cities and states that have imposed bans or fees on single-use plastic bags are reversing their policies amid concerns about the health risks posed by reusable bags. In the latest sign of how dramatically the coronavirus pandemic is altering the social landscape, even the liberal San Francisco Bay Area this week banned reusable grocery bags as a sanitary measure, dismaying recycling advocates who say durable sacks should still be allowed at stores, Politico reported. Faced with the realities of the coronavirus, the city's leaders have realized that excessive environmentalism isn't always compatible with the realities of the world we live in today. As such, the ban has been not only lifted but reversed. Reusable bags are now banned in the city by the Bay. In other words, the city that once led the nation in reusable bag enforcement is now one of the first to officially ban them. And as Shaw notes, San Francisco isn't the only progressive city reversing course course on the plastic ban, Maine, New York, and Massachusetts have all either suspended their plastic bag bans or halted enforcement of the regulations. Meanwhile, as reported by Politico, the plastic industry is pushing hard for their cause across the country, lobbying on the federal level, as well as some key states, including New York and New Jersey, asserting that often unwashed reusable bags are hotbeds for the coronavirus, which early research suggests can remain on surfaces. Along with the plastic ban reversal in San Francisco, other environmentally friendly efforts have been abandoned by the general populace, with people rushing out to their local grocery stores to buy up all of the bottled water, while companies impose their own bans on reusable items, including Starbucks and Coffee Bean. Environmentalists are trying to push back, but so far to no avail. Khan cites Californians Against Waste Executive Director Mark Murray chiding the misguided anti-reusable bag movement, but also expressing some sympathy. This fear of bringing reusable bags into the stores is misguided, but I certainly understand why store employees don't want to handle somebody else's things. I wouldn't have any expectation that somebody is going to put my grocery into my bag that I brought from home, close quote. I mean, look, these people have been screaming about the health hazards of plastic bags. Yet when a somewhat real health hazard emerged, it turned out that not only the health hazards of plastic bags claimed by the left don't exist, but plastic bags are inherently superior. Wow! Who would have thought? Oh wait, almost all conservatives and 100% of those skeptical of the religion of environmentalism knew that already and have been asserting it for decades. But then again, we need a mass panic event to finally get insane governments to agree that human nature exists and that everything we've been knowing between 1920 and 2005 is still true in 2020, even though a decade of far leftism tried really hard to convince us of the opposite. Anyway, speaking of human nature, the Kung Flu panic also revealed a lot of bad news about the peoples of Europe. Well, most of them anyway. Not exactly news though, we've been speaking about this on the channel for years, but for the normies, this is news in itself. Coming from Reuters, Germans snitch on neighbors flouting virus rules in echo of the Stasi past. Could you imagine such a headline on Reuters 5 months ago? I couldn't. Law-abiding Germans are zealously helping police crack down on people flouting new social distancing rules aimed at slowing the spread of the coronavirus by reporting on strangers, neighbors, and friends. In a country where denunciation was commonplace under communists in East Germany and National Socialism, police forces across the country are getting tip-offs on anything from corona parties to people driving to weekend cottages. We are getting tip-offs from the public about open restaurants or large gatherings of people in parks, said the spokeswoman, adding officers were, as always, ready to deal with information from the public. Forces around Germany are in a similar situation. Munich police took up to 150 calls a day last week from citizens reporting alleged breaches of the corona rules, Spiegel Online reports. The Mitteldeutsche Zeitung reported that authorities in Magdeburg had asked citizens not to overburden the police, quoting an official as saying that people shouldn't make a report every time they see 3 people sitting on a park bench. While many citizens are acting responsibly, some experts say jealousy, frustration, or bearing a grudge can play a role. Raphael Baer, professor of criminology and sociology at the Hamburg Police Academy, cited the phenomenon of locals in the eastern state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern denouncing Berliners driving to weekend homes by looking at their number plates. This willingness to report others is poisoning civilized behavior, somewhat Baer told Reuters. Some people lack the civil courage to confront others but tip off the police anonymously, said Baer, adding that people who had lived under the clout of East Germany's loathed Stasi secret police might be remembering how things worked 3 decades ago. One of the most repressive police organizations in the world, the Stasi, crushed dissent by infiltrating almost every aspect of life in East Germany and relied on around 200,000 informants who spied on friends, colleagues, and relatives. Snooping was widespread then, and it's easier for people to do this if they have done it before, said Baer. In any case, it is typically German to wait until there is a law that allows people to do this, close quote. Now, part of this is somewhat related to commie nostalgia. True. Some of this behavior was seen in other countries of the Intermarium during this panic, but nowhere as bad as Germany, though. And this is because the Wuhan Flu panic is revealing both the best and the worst excesses of every country. So in Germany, it revealed the greatness of having decentralization in ways almost no one else in continental Europe has, but it also revealed just how spiteful a lot of Germans are. Because snitching your neighbors is not new. Snitching to the tax authority if the neighbor gets a nicer car is a commonplace behavior in Germany, and not just East Germany. The panic just exacerbated the already existent problem to a level so high that even the normies notice it in enough numbers that it makes it the news on Reuters. The same is true in my own neck of the woods. The Kung Flu panic exacerbated the worst excesses of the Romanian government and of the people. See the extraordinarily high fines that made international headlines, but also the best. As a humanitarian worker myself, not only I'm not quarantined, but I get to travel a lot, and I've seen how communities adapted. The old reflexes of not fully trusting the state kicked in really fast. Only corporate bundles of sticks in the big cities still seriously believe that the populace really gives a damn about what they or our dumb president have to say. Is this good news? Well, yeah, because getting real information is always a good thing, and knowing exactly where your country rocks and where it sucks is a very useful piece of information. Now, Coronachan hasn't been particularly merciful with left-wing activists, though, and it's particularly hard for eco-Marxists. Eco-activist Jutta Ditfurth asks for money on Twitter, titles Die Welt. This case attracts attention on social media mainly because Ditfurth is well known. She's a politician who belonged to the left wing of the Greens until she left shortly after reunification. Today she sits for the local party Ökolniks Antirassistische Liste as a city councillor in Frankfurt's Römer. In this emergency situation, Ditfurth now hopes for donations from her followers. In her tweet on Monday, she included her payment details. Via Ditfurth's account number or PayPal, supporters can now send money to help the activist make ends meet. Ditfurth is hit twice by the crisis. Not only is she losing orders like no other, but she herself has fallen ill with the novel coronavirus. She is not a rich heiress, says the daughter of Hoymar von Ditfurth, who was first a pharmaceutical manager and later a TV presenter and best-selling author. Many people think that because I'm famous, I automatically have money. This is not true. I remember times when I spent years researching for books, borrowing money just to buy food. She also states that she's not using her compensation for herself at all. For some years now, there has been a regulation in Frankfurt that a party must have at least 3 members of parliament in order to be recognized as a parliamentary group. Ökolinks is only represented by 2 people. Consequently, we do not receive a single cent to cover the costs for our office. We therefore use our expense allowances after deduction of taxes to finance the running costs, close quote. Now, this individual is on the furthest fringes of the far left, even by German standards, a country where Merkel is considered conservative. Just so you can imagine how far down the helicopterable spectrum this individual is. But it's not just Germany or just left-wing politicians. It's all leftist activists from everywhere that are hammered by this. And it's lovely. CNN, hundreds of journalists are being laid off right when the public needs them the most. 2020 was supposed to be a banner year for digital media. BuzzFeed, Group 9 and Vice each indicated that this year they would be profitable, a long elusive goal for an industry bedeviled by diminishing ad dollars. But no one could have predicted that a global health crisis would hit just as business was picking up. BuzzFeed CEO Jonah Peretti told staffers in a memo this week that the company had been knocked off track because of the Wuhan flu. BuzzFeed has instituted pay cuts and scaled back on travel and hiring. According to a memo which was obtained by CNN Business, Peretti will not take a salary for the rest of the year. CNN Business reported on Sunday that at least 100 people in local newsrooms in the US lost their jobs in March. By Friday, that number shot up to at least 300 people as the impact of coronavirus continues to roil newspapers and digital media companies. BuzzFeed avoided layoffs through salary reductions, but that strategy isn't being implemented everywhere. Future PLC, which owns Laptop Mag, Tom's Guide, Life Science, and other publications, is planning to lay off at least 9 employees out of the 59 in the union, according to a statement from its union on Tuesday. The sad twist about these layoffs and restructuring is that they come just as the public is hungry for information about the pandemic, but there are now fewer journalists to provide vital information about it. Traffic is up for many sites and TV ratings have increased as people are stuck at home watching the news. Letster has written a number of coronavirus news stories and explainers, including one titled "Can Homemade Masks Protect You from the Wuhan Flu?" Letster told CNN Business that the life sciences site traffic has been the highest in its history. Future executives did not respond to multiple requests for comment. When CNN Business described the urgency to the company's phone operator, she said she was among those being laid off. The head of GO Media, the company formerly known as Gizmodo Media Group, which owns Deadspin, Jezebel, and Jalopnik, sent a dire email to his staff last week with the subject line, "Brace for Impact." This will not be an easy nor fun period for our company, let alone just about any other company, with our dynamic CEO Jim Spanfeller wrote in the email, which was obtained by CNN Business. I'm sure you have all been following the news around the overall economic picture and how disturbing it is, as well as the stock market drive that has been nothing short of terrifying. This will hurt. A GO spokesperson told CNN Business that there's been a meaningful uptick in traffic, no layoffs are planned, and it's too early to have a clear picture on the revenue. As newsrooms seek to cut costs, some have eliminated their freelance budgets. California freelancers were already struggling after a state law went into effect in January that restricted their output to 35 submissions a year per outlet. The law, AB 5, prompted Vox Media to part ways with hundreds of its California-based freelancers. Local newsrooms continue to face constraints on their business, and this kept especially troubling during a global pandemic with the local ramifications. New Orleans is one of the fastest growing hotspots of coronavirus cases in the US. With the sharp increase in cases and hospitals running out of capacity, the community needs access to quality information more than ever. On Monday, editor Peter Kovac and publisher Yudi Terzotis of the Advocate in Baton Rouge publicly announced they would be temporarily furloughing about a tenth of our 400-member workforce, and the rest of us will begin 4-day work weeks. The Advocate had absorbed the New Orleans Times, I don't know how to read that, last year after the latter lost more than 150 staffers in a round of layoffs. Governments in other countries are getting involved to help keep their media industries afloat. The BBC, which is supported by government-mandated fees paid for by UK citizens, is suspending a plan to cut 450 jobs. The cut would have saved £40 million, but the BBC's Director General said it would be inappropriate given the need to cover the crisis. The Canadian government announced on Thursday its plan to spend $30 million on an ad campaign for coronavirus awareness. Right now, it is more important than ever that Canadians have access to the latest news and information, said Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. To ensure that journalists can continue to do this vital work, our government is announcing new measures to support them. Could federal or state support come to the aid of U.S. newspapers? Not likely, says Joel Kaplan, an Associate Dean for Professional Graduate Students and Professor of Magazine, Newspaper and Digital Journalism at Syracuse University. I definitely don't see the federal government being involved. They are involved to the extent that they contribute to PBS and NPR. But Kaplan said U.S. media could get a subscription boost from individuals looking for reliable Coronachan news and businesses running more ads when they open. We're in an unbelievable crisis that no one's ever seen before. Well, actually, that's not exactly true. Who's alive, lifetime, and guess what their lifeline is? It's the local news media because it's the only way they're keeping informed, Kaplan said. Now, surprisingly, the coverage given by CNN on this issue is the most moderate of all. Other left-wing outlets treated this in a fully hysterical manner. I mean, some went as far as to say that this is a media extinction event, which is crazy. I mean, yeah, sure, I would love that to be true. I mean, the left-wing media needs extinction, just like the Wuhan Flu needs new hosts, but it's not exactly like that. Still, seeing so many of these extremist activists being scared is inherently good news. Maybe we get lucky and investigative journalism in the field makes a serious comeback. You know, kind of like I want to do in Sweden. By the way, send me to Sweden. But no, seriously, the media will be fine. A bit of culling among the most extreme and screeching voices in the far-left media does not an extinction event make. Just a bit of, you know, pest control. Now, the Chinese virus also made possible a lot of alliances and statements few could even dare to imagine 3 or 4 months ago. I mean, take a look at this from March the 19th, Fox News. Ilhan Omar praises Trump's incredible response to coronavirus pandemic. She said unprecedented times require unprecedented leadership, and Omar added, we're seeing that in our country right now. Finally, we should never let politics get in the way of good politics. This is a great start and hope others will be part of a united front to push for good policies that will help us work through the economic anxiety the country is feeling right now. Now, I have made roughly 500 predictions and bets with various individuals on the Wuhan flu panic because, you know, I really like money, and convincing panic cards and especially smart asses to put their money where their mouth is, well, is useful both for me because I get the money and for them because it forces them to rethink their assumptions. What I'm trying to say is that so far I've been really good at predicting a lot of the things that have already happened with the occasion of the Kung Flu panic. But this isn't one of them. I mean, really? Ilhan Omar to praise Trump? Now, admittedly, it was mostly a one-off, but still, for a raging Ba'athist ideologue, because that's what Ilhan Omar is, a heir of the Ba'athista movement of Somalia. So for a raging loon like her to praise Trump, now that's a hell has frozen over kind of moment. Well, almost. But probably the biggest wins are on economics, really. Via Japan Times, Japan sets aside 243.5 billion yen to help firms shift production out of China. Japan has earmarked 243 billion of its record economic support package to help manufacturers ship production out of China as the Kung Flu pandemic disrupts supply chains between the major trading partners. The extra budget compiled to offset the devastating effects of the pandemic includes 220 billion yen for companies shifting production back to Japan and 23 billion yen, 23.5 billion yen for those seeking to move production to other countries, according to details posted online. The move coincides with what should have been a celebration of friendlier ties between the two countries. Chinese President Winnie the Flu was supposed to make a state visit to Japan this month, but the summit, which would have been the first of its kind in a decade, was postponed a month ago as the virus began to spread through Japan. No new date has been set. China is Japan's biggest trading partner under normal circumstances, but Chinese imports sank by nearly half in February as the contagion shuttered its all-important factories, starving Japanese manufacturers of parts. That has been renewed talk of reducing Japan's reliance on China as a manufacturing base. The government's panel on future investment last month discussed the idea of shifting manufacturing of high added value products back to Japan and for production of other goods to be spread across Southeast Asia. There will be something of a shift, said Shinichi Seiki, an economist at the Japan Research Institute. Seiki said some Japanese manufacturers in China that were focused on exports were already considering moving out. Having this in the budget will definitely provide an impetus. Companies such as car makers that are manufacturing for the Chinese domestic market will likely stay put, he said. It remains to be seen how the policy will affect Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's years-long efforts to restore relations with China, close quote. Now, admittedly, efforts to move out from China have started in late 2018, as a matter of fact, but the Kung Flu panic has accelerated things in ways that they would not have happened otherwise. I mean, without this panic, the process would have been like any other major economic process. Slow, barely noticeable, with a lot of negotiations, kind of like the process that moved manufacturing to China in the first place. That didn't happen in 4 years or in 4 months, but in 30 years. Well, the reverse might not have taken 30 years, but it would have taken at least 15 for sure. The Wuhan Flu panic, however, changed the calendar and cut at least 2 years from that, if not more. And this is especially true for companies that are from countries that offer incentives, such as Japan. I mean, not only is the populace kind of pissed off at the People's Republic of China now more than ever, but there's also government shekels if you, as a company, stop tiptoeing around the decision to move out of China and just do it. Well, that's a huge win in a way. Now, is it inherently a good policy? I'm not so sure. The populace being pissed off with some smart trading on the stock market and maybe some sanctions on China would have been, in my opinion, just as good and didn't involve taxpayers' money given to big firms. But I guess we'll see in a few years. In the meantime, anyone from a civilized country moving out from commie China is inherently good news. So there's that. And then there are the wins on the transgenderist narrative. I have to admit that I'm filled with joy to read these articles. It's something we've been working towards for years. We would have succeeded anyway. I'm firmly convinced by that. We were on our way to get a lot of this done by the end of 2020, but every second earlier than that is still good news. Big news, Hungary's far-right Prime Minister Viktor Orban has moved to strip away trans rights as one of his very first acts after his pandemic power grab. On Monday, the Hungarian parliament agreed to extend Orban's already strong powers by granting him the right to rule by decree indefinitely, meaning he no longer needs to consult other lawmakers before making decisions. His powers came into effect on Monday morning, and by the evening, his deputy, Zsolt Semyen, had introduced a new bill which, if passed, will replace gender with birth sex in all legal documents issued in the country. The effect of this is that Hungarian citizens will be unable to change their gender legally, a significant rollback of rights in the Eastern European country. Since data in official documents such as ID cards, driving licenses and passports are taken from the civil registry, the change will affect those as well. The explanatory memorandum of the bill states that the current legislation does not define gender as it is determined biologically, adding that the gender entered into the civil registry is based on facts determined by doctored, declared by the registry. It further states, quote, "Given that completely changing one's biological sex is impossible, it is necessary to lay it down in law that it cannot be changed in the civil registry either." In recent years, Orban has refused to join his European neighbors in backing LGBT+ rights, declining to ratify the Istanbul Convention for its definition of gender as a social construct. In 2015, he blocked an arrangement to prevent LGBT+ discrimination in Hungary, and in 2017, he hosted and spoke on behalf of a vile anti-LGBT+ group in Budapest. His latest bill will be terrifying for Hungary's trans and non-binary community, all the three people, and will not escape their notice that it was proposed in the eve of Trans Day of Visibility, adding insult to the injury. In recent years, Orban has been heavily criticized for his increasing oversight of the judiciary, media, and foreign universities, and the new emergency measures will cement his power by effectively removing all checks and balances. The law also introduced jail terms for spreading disinformation about the virus, raising fears that it could be used to neuter critics of the government's approach, close quote. Well, good. Now, it's also funny that suddenly Pink News is now interested in free speech and concerned that, oh my god, Orban's power could be used to neuter critics of governments. Who cares? They weren't so interested 3 months ago. I mean, I maintain the same. I criticize governments now. I was criticizing them 3 months ago. They weren't, however. They weren't so interested in free speech 3 months ago. 3 months ago, they were advocating jail terms for those who disagree with them. In reality, though, even with the emergency powers, Orban Viktor still has less power than Conte has in Italy, or Ludovic Orban in Romania, or than Germany's Healthsführer, or than the current Prime Minister of Spain. Still, banning the change of the legal sex is a step in the right direction. The law has to be constrained by physical reality, not guided by the ever-changing feelings of psychiatric patients. And it's not just Hungary. Idaho also took advantage of the period to pass a similar law, and there's also another US state that did the same. Good. And perhaps most surprisingly, even the United Kingdom took a step in the right direction. Now that came as a surprise, I have to admit. The Telegraph, trans children to be banned from surgery to change their gender, the Equalities Minister announces. It's an article from the UK, so it reads like a meme, but it's still good news. Children who wish to undergo surgery to change their gender will be banned from doing so in the future, the Equalities Minister has announced. In a landmark move which has been criticized by trans rights charities as introducing a new form of inequality into the British medical practice, Liz Truss said that the government will set out details of the plans later this summer. Currently, people under the age of 18 are allowed surgery, but with parental consent. Even still, the process is so long drawn out that in reality few teenagers are able to undergo irreversible surgery before they reach adulthood. However, the Equalities Minister today signaled plans to ban under 18s with gender dysphoria from genital reconstructive surgery in a move she claimed which would protect them from making those irreversible decisions. Giving evidence to the Women and Equality Select Committee, as I said, this is a meme, she set out her priorities for the Government Equalities Office and revealed that the government's full response to reforming the Gender Recognition Act will be published this summer. This comes 2 years after former Women and Equalities Minister Penny Mordaunt launched a public consultation into how trans people change their legal gender on their birth certificates. Under the existing act, a trans person has to undergo a 2-year waiting period and a review from a specialist panel before being able to change their gender legally. Addressing the committee, Ms. Truss outlined three very important principles she will be implementing. This include the extremely important protection of single-sex spaces and ensuring that transgender adults are free to live their lives as they wish without fear of persecution, whilst maintaining the proper checks and balances in the system. The minister also addressed the issue of gender reassignment surgery for children, which is not directly linked to the act but is relevant. She said that it was about making sure under 18s are protected from decisions that they could make that are irreversible in the future. I believe strongly that adults should have the freedom to lead their lives as they see fit, but I think it's very important that while people are still developing their decision-making capabilities, that we protect them from making those irreversible decisions. Of course, some of these policies have been delayed, Chair, by the specific issues of around COVID, but I can assure you that alongside the COVID work, our officials continue to do those things to make them happen. Responding to the minister's comments, a spokesperson for Mermaids, a charity which supports transgender children, those people should be hanged. We believe that transgender young people should have the same right to make important personal decisions as non-trans people. It would be an extraordinary move for the Minister for Women and Equalities to support the introduction of a new form of inequality into the British medical practice by effectively treating transgender teenagers as less capable than their cisgender peers. The spokesperson added that still the NHS own statistics show the rate of regret around gender affirmation surgeries is very low indeed, and the process by which young trans people access medical interventions is already subject to a number of safeguards, not least the clinical judgment of our own experts within the health system, close quote. Well, first of all, that's not exactly true. The rate of regret is indeed pretty high. So is the rate of malpractice, given that their own NHS personnel resigns consistently from their so-called gender clinic, almost all citing anti-scientific practices and policies. Secondly, it is a lie, and an intentional one, to assert that this is a form of inequality. Quite the opposite. It is a form of equality under the law. Finally, minors suffering from gender identity disorder are treated under medical law the way minors suffering from other disorders from the body dysmorphia spectrum are. If a child wants a hand cut off, the answer is no, regardless of how much the child wants it. The same should be true for this disorder. And it's good to see common sense finally winning. Now, sure, this isn't the end of it, of course, but given that 6 months ago people were arrested in the United Kingdom for criticizing the current policy, this is huge progress. The government agrees that mutilating children is wrong, and the Supreme Court agrees that criticizing the transgenderist lobby must be protected speech. Good job, UK. It took you a while, but hey, better later than never, I guess. And finally, a piece of news that brought me a lot of laughter. It's not really good news per se, but it's not bad news either. The Daily Star: sex robot firm selling antibacterial dolls for coronavirus self-isolation. A top sex robot firm has moved to assure customers its dolls are antibacterial as people lock themselves inside over the coronavirus crisis. US giant Real Doll, also known as Abyss, shared a snap of one of its robots sitting on a bed. The company reached out over the coronavirus crisis, which has led people around the world to stay indoors and avoid social contact. With the scores of people facing agonizing sexless spells, Real Doll existing or potential customers that assures their potential customers that there is hope. The message on Instagram read, "Self-isolating doesn't have to be the worst. All Real Dolls are made from platinum-grade silicone and are naturally antibacterial and non-porous." It follows a landmark period for Real Doll, who is unleashing a range of futuristic models onto the market. Earlier this year, it released a video of its new AI-driven dolls that convey human expression. Those dolls talk to the camera, explaining AI functions and then replicating the expressions. They tell the camera, "We are AI-driven robotic dolls and we are here to become your perfect companion. Our time together will be magical. You have never met anyone like us before. We have unprecedented features like a modular head system that allows us to create a multitude of expressions. We blink, we move, we speak, and we do it all just for you. Our faces can easily be swapped and accommodate your desires." My lip sync mechanisms allow me to interact verbally. Our bodies are skillfully and carefully crafted down to the most delicate details. What if I told you if I could feel you? With sensory upgrades, I will be able to react to your every touch. We are here to create an experience beyond your wildest dreams, one that has never been possible. Meanwhile, the rival company, Silicon Lovers, this reads like a meme, has started to supply models with implanted human hair. The founder, Louis Love, told the Daily Star Online that they do realistic. Some customers are mistaking them for humans. Close quote. Now, in all fairness, this isn't surprising. I mean, all companies have tried to cash in on the Coronachan panic. Of course they do. I did that too in my field as well. But it's funny because on this channel we've been documenting since 2015 the feminist rage against sex dolls. And with this development, it really looks like that silly meme with a raging feminist on the left screeching, "No, you can't just make a great doll to replace a woman," and the smiling man on the right saying, I don't know, "Haha, realistic sanitary sex dolls go brrr." I mean, come on, it's funny. Now, with that said, they lost me at the "we speak" portion. I mean, don't these people know their customer base? I mean, one of the reasons men would acquire such a toy is precisely because it doesn't speak. I'm just saying. Or maybe I'm wrong. I mean, in fact, it's very likely that I'm wrong, given that I'm not in the industry and also not a potential customer. The only reason I'm even following the topic is because it pisses feminists off. And generally speaking, almost everything feminists dislike is, at the very least, a topic worthwhile. And this is one of them. Because while I have a men's rights background, and a pretty solid one too, I have to admit that I really don't understand this one. I really, really don't. And I should, because this will become a huge market and a separate but relevant, politically useful group. One day I'll have to set up a few interviews with clients or with people, preferably men, who understand this phenomenon better than me. Anyway, that's it for now for the 11th episode of this occasional series. I guess I'll add another group of good stories and make another episode like this until I go to Sweden, I hope. The thing is that I'm pretty reluctant to making periodic insanity type of videos now because people's nerves are pretty stretched now already. But I'll make some of those too soon enough. I mean, I'm going to Sweden, so I'll sure find some of that too over there. I mean, remember, they may have the right attitude towards the Wuhan flu, but the rest of the mental disorder is still there. Yeah, so with all of that being said, thank you all for watching. Thank you for your continuous and generous support. Don't forget to subscribe, send me to Sweden, visit our website, and I will see you all soon on the Freedom Alternative.